The conference room smelled of burnt coffee and fluorescent anxiety. Marcus Webb sat at the head of the table, spine straight, fingers laced. Across from him, Diane Carter waited. Her hands rested flat on the polished wood. They didn't tremble. The manila folder slid across the surface with a whisper. Marcus didn't meet her eyes. 3 documented instances of tardiness in 30 days. Company policy is clear. Diane stared at the folder. She didn't open it. The clock above the door read 9:47 a.m. The irony wasn't lost on her. You're terminated, effective immediately. Marcus's voice carried no inflection. It was the tone he used for budget cuts and vendor cancellations. Professional, efficient, bloodless. Someone coughed near the door. Janet from HR shifted in her seat, pen hovering over her notepad. Through the glass walls, other employees pretended not to watch. Some didn't pretend. Diane's jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition or maybe exhaustion. She nodded once. Understood. Marcus finally looked at her. He expected tears or anger or pleading. He got silence. It unsettled him more than shouting would have. Security will escort you out. He closed his copy of the file. HR will process your final check. Diane stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. She smoothed her emerald green blouse, the one she'd ironed at 5 that morning. Then she walked toward the door, shoulders back, pace measured. The room held its breath until she disappeared. Marcus returned to his office feeling lighter. Another problem solved. Another metric satisfied. He didn't think about Diane Carter again that day. He should have. 3 months earlier, Diane's alarm clock shattered the darkness at 4:45 a.m. She silenced it before the second beep. Her studio apartment was small but immaculate. Everything folded, everything placed. Order was survival when you worked 2 jobs. She brewed coffee in a dented percolator. While it bubbled, she pulled on scrubs for her night shift at Children's Memorial Hospital. The custodial work paid minimum wage, but the hours fit between her daughter's college schedule and her morning job at Webb Industries. Diane studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. 43 years old. Dark circles permanent now, etched like watermarks. Her mother had worked 3 jobs once, putting Diane through community college. You do what needs doing, her mother used to say. No complaints, no excuses. By 5:30 a.m., Diane was mopping the pediatric wing's 4th floor. The hallways gleamed under her care. Nurses nodded as they passed. She knew their names, their kids' names, which ones liked their coffee black. Room 408 was always last on her route. The boy inside was 8, maybe 9. Ethan Webb, the chart outside, read. He slept fitfully, oxygen tubes snaking across his small face. Diane had learned not to get attached to the patients. But something about his quietness reminded her of her daughter at that age. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus Webb's alarm went off at 6 a.m. sharp. His house was colonial, 3 stories, lawn service twice weekly. His wife, Jennifer, was already awake, packing Ethan's medical bag for another specialist appointment. "Did you call the insurance company?" she asked without looking up. Marcus knotted his tie. They approved another round of tests. His voice was tired. Ethan had been sick for 2 years. The diagnosis kept shifting. Respiratory complications, possible autoimmune disorder, episodes of breathing failure that came without warning. "He had another episode last night," Jennifer said quietly. "Around 2 a.m. The night nurse handled it." Marcus paused. These episodes were becoming frequent. Too frequent. "We'll figure it out," he said. It was what he always said. At Webb Industries, Marcus was known for results. Regional manager at 39. He transformed underperforming teams with ruthless efficiency. Punctuality, accountability, measurable outcomes, these were his gods. They made sense in a world where his son's illness made none. Diane clocked in at Webb Industries at 8 a.m. Her shift at the hospital finished. She was Marcus's administrative assistant, hired 4 months prior. She filed reports, managed schedules, answered phones with practiced courtesy. She was good at being invisible. Their worlds overlapped in spreadsheets and conference rooms. They were professional, polite, strangers. The pattern started subtly. First Tuesday of the month, Diane arrived at 9:12 a.m. She slipped into her cubicle without explanation, booted up her computer, dove into work. Marcus noticed but said nothing. Everyone was late occasionally. The second Tuesday, she arrived at 9:28 a.m. This time, Marcus was waiting. "Diane, my office." She followed him, still wearing her coat. His office smelled of leather and ambition. Awards lined the walls like battle trophies. "This is becoming a pattern," Marcus said, leaning against his desk. "Is there a problem I should know about?" Diane's throat tightened. She thought of Ethan's blue lips at 2:47 a.m., the way his breathing had stopped for 11 seconds, the way she'd held his hand while the crash team arrived. "Personal matter," she said carefully. "It won't happen again." Marcus studied her. "I appreciate your work, Diane, but punctuality isn't negotiable. We have standards, I understand." She meant it. She understood perfectly. The third Tuesday, she arrived at 9:41 a.m. This time the entire office noticed. Whispers followed her to her desk. Janet from HR materialized like a bureaucratic ghost. "Marcus wants to see you." The conference room was already set up. Formal termination meeting. Marcus sat flanked by HR. The manila folder waited like a guillotine. 3 instances in 30 days, Marcus began. His tone was rehearsed, probably practiced with Janet beforehand. Despite previous warnings. "Company policy is unambiguous," Diane wanted to speak. The words climbed her throat. "Your son almost died last night. I was there. I held his hand while you slept." But what proof did she have? Who would believe the custodian over the regional manager? "Do you have anything to say?" Marcus asked. She shook her head. Explaining would sound like excuses. Excuses sounded like weakness. Her mother's voice echoed, "Do what needs doing." "No complaints. Then we have no choice." Marcus slid the termination letter across the table. Effective immediately. The room felt airless. Through the glass walls, David from accounting smirked. He'd been passed over when Diane was hired. Sweet vindication for him now. Diane signed the acknowledgement form. Her signature was steady. She stood, smoothed her emerald blouse, and walked out. Behind her, Marcus felt the brief satisfaction of maintaining standards. Order restored. Problem solved. Neither of them knew the footage existed yet. Neither knew that 37 floors away, hospital security cameras had been recording everything. Every 2 a.m. crisis. Every time Diane stayed when her shift ended. Every moment Marcus's policies punished the woman who kept his son breathing. The truth was coming. But truth moved slowly. For now, Diane drove home unemployed, and Marcus returned to his spreadsheets, convinced he'd done the right thing. Diane sat in her car for 40 minutes after leaving Webb Industries. The parking lot emptied around her. Other employees fled toward lunch, toward normalcy. She stayed, hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Her phone buzzed. Text from her daughter. "Mom, tuition deadline is Friday. Did the payment go through?" Diane didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The numbers in her bank account were already screaming. 1 job barely covered rent. 2 jobs meant survival. 0 jobs meant catastrophe. She closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, she saw Ethan's small hand reaching for hers in the darkened hospital room. She heard his whispered "thank you" when the oxygen mask came off. She felt his pulse under her fingers, fluttering like a trapped bird. "He's alive because of you," she told herself. That matters. But the rent wouldn't pay itself with good intentions. Her daughter's education wouldn't fund itself with moral victories. The world didn't care about noble sacrifices made in empty hospital rooms at 3 a.m. Anger bloomed hot in her chest. Not at Ethan, never at Ethan, at Marcus. At his cold efficiency. At the system that valued punctuality over humanity. At herself for staying silent. She could have explained. Should have explained. But would he have believed her? Would anyone? The black custodian claiming she saved the white executive's son. It sounded like desperation, like the kind of story people invented when cornered. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. A memory surfaced, her mother's hands worn raw from double shifts at the nursing home. Her mother never complained, never explained, just did what needed doing and kept moving forward. Diane started the car. The engine coughed before catching. She had 4 hours before her hospital shift started. 4 hours to decide whether to keep showing up, to save a child whose father had just destroyed her life. She drove toward Children's Memorial. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Diane's mother had been a nurse for 30 years. She died when Diane was 25, exhausted and uninsured, her heart giving out between shifts. At the funeral, Diane found a note in her mother's locker. Care doesn't clock out. People aren't problems. Remember this. Diane had carried those words through every job since. Through factory work and retail hell. Through community college classes and single parenthood. Through her daughter's childhood and the terrifying years when money meant choosing between electricity and groceries. The custodial job at Children's Memorial came 5 years ago. It was supposed to be temporary. Everything was always temporary. But Diane liked the work, the quiet halls, the purposeful solitude. She liked making spaces clean for sick children. That felt like helping without needing permission. 3 months ago, during her 2 a.m. rounds on the 4th floor, she'd heard the monitor alarm from room 408. Ethan Webb's oxygen levels were dropping, fast. The boy was alone, thrashing against tangled sheets, his breathing shallow and desperate. Diane didn't hesitate. She pressed the call button, then moved to his side. "Hey, sweetheart, look at me. You're okay." Ethan's eyes found hers, wild with fear. She took his hand. "Breathe with me. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. The night nurse arrived in seconds. The respiratory team followed. Ethan stabilized. Crisis averted. Diane returned to her mop and bucket. Nobody mentioned it, but it happened again the following week. Same time, same room. Ethan's breathing would deteriorate around 2 a.m. The pattern was clockwork. Diane started timing her rounds to pass room 408 at 1:45 a.m. Just checking, just making sure she learned his rhythms. The way his breathing changed before an episode. The subtle color shift in his lips. She started staying close, finishing her other tasks quickly so she could linger nearby. The nurses noticed. "You're good with him," one said. "He's calmer when you're here," Diane shrugged. "Just doing my job." But it wasn't her job. Her job was emptying trash and mopping floors. Monitoring a child's breathing wasn't in her contract. Staying 2 hours past her shift wasn't required. Arriving exhausted to her morning job at Webb Industries wasn't mandatory. She did it anyway, because her mother's voice wouldn't stop. Care doesn't clock out. She didn't know Ethan was Marcus Webb's son. Not at first. The last name was common enough. It took 3 weeks before she saw Marcus visiting during evening hours, before she connected the stern regional manager to the frightened boy in room 408. That knowledge changed everything. And nothing. Ethan still needed someone at 2 a.m. Marcus still expected her at 8 a.m. The math didn't work. Something had to break. Diane chose herself. She chose to be late. To sacrifice her income for a child who would never know. To trust that the universe kept score, even when humans didn't. 1 week after Diane's termination, Carlos Mendez sat in the hospital security office reviewing footage. The assignment was routine. Investigate a reported theft from the 3rd-floor supply closet. He scrolled through the night shift recordings, watching empty hallways and occasional nurses passing like ghosts. His eyes glazed after the 2nd hour. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed something odd. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. 4th floor pediatric wing. A woman in custodial scrubs entered room 408. She didn't leave for 40 minutes. Carlos frowned. He fast-forwarded. The next night, same time, same room. The woman again, staying long past normal cleaning duties. He checked the previous week. The pattern went back weeks. Sometimes she stayed an hour, sometimes two. He cross-referenced the employee logs. Diane Carter, night custodian. Shift ended at 6 a.m. No complaints on file. Excellent performance reviews. Carlos pulled up the patient registry. Room 408. Ethan Webb, age 8, chronic respiratory condition. He checked the nursing notes. Multiple 2 a.m. respiratory episodes documented. Dates matched perfectly with the footage of Diane Carter's extended stays. He watched one clip more carefully. Diane stood beside the bed holding the boy's hand. Her lips moved, singing maybe or praying. When the monitor alarm sounded, her hand was already on the call button. The response team arrived to find her keeping the child calm, his breathing stabilized enough to prevent full arrest. Carlos sat back. This woman had been doing medical monitoring. Unpaid, off the clock. Why? He pulled up her personnel file. Listed emergency contact Marcus Webb, Webb Industries. Wait, he checked the patient file again. Father, Marcus Webb. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The custodian had been saving her boss's son without anyone knowing. Including her boss. Carlos's supervisor knocked on the door. Find anything? Carlos turned the monitor. You need to see this. They watched 3 clips together. The supervisor's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to quiet fury. Does the family know? I don't think anyone knows, Carlos said. Check the termination records. Diane Carter, fired last week from Webb Industries for chronic tardiness. The supervisor pulled up the dates. Every late morning corresponded exactly to a crisis night at the hospital. The evidence was irrefutable, devastating. We need to tell them, Carlos said. Tell them what? That their employee sacrificed her job to save their son? That they destroyed her livelihood while she kept him alive? The supervisor rubbed his temples. This is going to detonate. They debated protocol. Patient privacy, liability, moral obligation. The footage sat between them like a live grenade. Finally, the supervisor reached for the phone. Get me Marcus Webb's contact information. He needs to see this. Carlos queued up the footage. 37 clips, 17 different nights. Hours of evidence showing Diane Carter's silent sacrifice. The truth was about to surface. And when it did, nothing would be the same. The hospital director, Dr. Patricia Hollis, reviewed the footage 3 times before making the call. She'd been in hospital administration for 20 years. She'd seen miracles and tragedies, heroes and negligence. But this was something else entirely. She dialed Marcus Webb's direct line. Mr. Webb, this is Dr. Hollis from Children's Memorial. We need to discuss something regarding your son's care. Can you come in today? Marcus's voice sharpened. Is Ethan okay? Did something happen? Ethan is fine. But there's something you need to see. It's important. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in Dr. Hollis's office. The blinds were drawn. A laptop sat open on the desk between them. Before I show you this, Dr. Hollis said carefully, I need to know, are you familiar with our night custodial staff? Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, what? Just answer the question. I don't know. Why would I be? Dr. Hollis turned the laptop toward him. This is from our security system. 4th floor pediatric wing. The timestamp shows 2:34 a.m. 3 weeks ago. Marcus watched. The footage showed a woman in scrubs entering Ethan's room. She moved to his bedside with practiced ease, held his hand. When the monitor alarm sounded, she pressed the call button and kept the boy calm until help arrived. I don't understand, Marcus said. Who is that? Keep watching. The next clip showed the same woman, different night. Same routine, same quiet competence. Marcus leaned closer. Something about her posture, the way she moved. Wait! His voice cracked. Go back, Dr. Hollis rewound. Froze the frame, showing the woman's face clearly. Marcus's world tilted. That's Diane Carter. Your former employee, I'm told. She's the night custodian here. Marcus stared at the frozen image. Diane's face exhausted but focused, eyes on Ethan. For 5 years. Exemplary record. Dr. Hollis opened a folder. We have 37 clips like this. 17 different nights. She stayed anywhere from 40 minutes to 3 hours past her shift. Never clocked overtime. Never reported it, just stayed. Marcus couldn't speak. His brain struggled to process the information. Diane worked nights here. Diane was there during Ethan's episodes. Diane was... The dates, he whispered. Dr. Hollis nodded. We cross-referenced your company's attendance records. Every morning she arrived late to Webb Industries corresponds exactly with a crisis night here. She was monitoring your son. The room spun. Marcus gripped the desk edge. She never said anything. Would you have believed her? The question hung like an accusation. Marcus thought of the termination meeting. Diane's silence. The way she'd simply nodded and left. She could have explained. She could have, but would he have listened? Would he have believed the black custodian claiming to save his son? Or would he have dismissed it as a desperate lie? The answer made him sick. Dr. Hollis let Marcus watch all 37 clips. Each one was a knife twisting deeper. Diane singing softly to Ethan. Diane adjusting his oxygen tubes when they slipped. Diane pressing the call button at the first sign of distress. Diane staying until the crisis passed, then slipping away like she'd never been there. The night staff called her Ethan's guardian angel, Dr. Hollis said quietly. They thought it was sweet. Nobody realized she was sacrificing her other job to be here. Marcus's hands shook. I fired her. Yes, I fired her for being late, for... He couldn't finish. The enormity of what he'd done crushed the air from his lungs. There's more. Dr. Hollis pulled up the medical notes. According to our respiratory team, Ethan's 2 a.m. episodes were becoming increasingly severe. Early intervention was critical. Your son is alive, Mr. Webb, in part because someone was there during those crucial first minutes. Someone. Not some random nurse or medical professional. Diane, the woman he terminated with cold efficiency. The woman whose life he destroyed while she was saving his son. Marcus stood abruptly. I need to speak with her. Where does she live? Do you have her address? Dr. Hollis hesitated. Mr. Webb, I'm not sure. Please. His voice broke. I need to make this right. She wrote down the address. Marcus took it with trembling hands. He left the hospital in a daze, the address burning in his pocket. At home, Jennifer asked about the meeting. Marcus couldn't answer. He sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, watching the footage again and again. Each viewing revealed new details. The way Diane's shoulders sagged with exhaustion. The way she never hesitated. The way she chose Ethan over her own survival. Around midnight, Marcus checked the Webb Industries HR portal. Diane's unemployment claim had been denied. Reason terminated for cause. No benefits qualified. He'd taken everything from her. Her job, her income, her daughter's tuition, her future, while she'd been giving his son every tomorrow he'd ever have. Marcus grabbed his car keys. The address Dr. Hollis provided was across the city. He drove through empty streets, practicing what he'd say. Apologize, grovel, offer anything, everything. Dawn was breaking when he pulled up to the address. A weathered apartment complex. Rust-stained balconies. Diane's sedan in the parking lot, barely holding together. This was what his policies had done. This was the cost of his efficiency. Marcus climbed the stairs to apartment 2B, raised his hand to knock, froze. What could he possibly say? What words could bridge this chasm? He'd destroyed her life while she saved his son. Sorry felt obscene, inadequate. He knocked anyway, 3 times. His heart hammered. The door opened. Diane stood there in her hospital scrubs, about to leave for another shift. She saw Marcus. Her expression went carefully blank. Mr. Webb, Diane, His voice broke. I saw the footage. The hospital showed me. Understanding flickered in her eyes. Then something harder. She started to close the door. Please, Marcus said. Please, I need to explain. I need to... You need to what? Diane's voice was quiet, lethal. Explain how you fired me for saving your son's life? Explain how your policies matter more than his breathing. I didn't know, Marcus said desperately. If I had known, would it have changed anything? She stepped into the doorway. Would you have believed me, Mr. Webb, or would you have called it a lie? A convenient excuse from someone who couldn't follow the rules? The question detonated what remained of Marcus's composure. Because she was right. He wouldn't have believed her. Couldn't have believed her. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Diane, I'm so sorry. Your son needed someone, Diane said. Her voice gentled slightly. That's all that mattered. Not your policies. Not your metrics, him, she stepped back. The door started to close. Wait, Marcus said. Let me fix this. But the door shut. The lock clicked. Marcus stood alone in the hallway as the sun rose over the city. Inside the apartment, Diane leaned against the door. Her legs nearly gave out. She'd faced Marcus Webb, told him the truth, survived. But surviving wasn't the same as winning. Her bank account was still empty. Her daughter's tuition was still overdue. Justice didn't pay bills. She grabbed her keys. Another shift waited. Another night of caring for children whose parents would never know her name. The truth was out. But the truth didn't change anything. Not yet. Diane's apartment felt smaller every day. Bills covered the kitchen table like accusations. Rent notice 7 days until eviction proceedings. Electric company. Final disconnect warning. Her daughter's college bursar office. Account suspended pending payment. She sat on the worn couch, phone dark in her hands. 3 job applications rejected. 2 interviews cancelled. The unemployment office had stopped returning her calls. Her savings account showed $127.43. Rent was $950, the walls pressed closer. Outside, the city hummed with people who had jobs, futures, certainty. Inside, Diane existed in suspension. Not quite falling, not quite standing. Just waiting for gravity to remember her. Her phone buzzed. Text from her daughter. Mom, I had to drop 2 classes. Can't attend without paying. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Diane's hands shook. Her daughter shouldn't have to figure it out. That was Diane's job. That was the whole point. Work 2 jobs, sacrifice sleep, build something better for the next generation. And now it was crumbling. She looked at her hospital scrubs hanging on the bedroom door. She'd kept showing up to Children's Memorial. Kept working her custodial shifts. Kept passing room 408 at 2 a.m., though Ethan had been moved to a different floor with better monitoring. Nobody there knew she'd been fired. Nobody asked why she looked more exhausted than usual. She was invisible again, the way she'd always been. Her mother's note surfaced in her memory. Care doesn't clock out. But caring hadn't protected her. Caring hadn't paid the rent. Caring had cost her everything. For the first time in her life, Diane wondered if her mother had been wrong. If maybe caring was a luxury for people who could afford it. People with safety nets and second chances. People unlike her. She closed her eyes, breathed, counted to 10. When she opened them, the bills were still there. But so was her resolve. She'd survived worse than this. She'd find a way, she always did. Marcus couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. For 3 days he moved through his house like a ghost. Jennifer noticed but said nothing. Ethan asked if Daddy was sick. Marcus lied and said he was fine. He wasn't fine. He was unraveling. At work he requested an emergency meeting with the executive team. They gathered in the boardroom, confused by the urgency. Marcus pulled up the hospital footage on the main screen. I need to show you something. They watched in silence. 37 clips. Diane's face again and again, caring for a child while sacrificing everything. When the last clip ended, nobody spoke. Finally, the CEO leaned back. That's the employee you terminated last month. Yes, Marcus said, for tardiness. Yes, while she was saving your son's life. Marcus's throat closed. Yes, the room absorbed this information. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered something about liability. The CEO studied Marcus with an expression that landed between pity and assessment. "What do you want to do about this?" she asked. "Reinstate her. Full back pay. Formal apology. Whatever it takes, and if she refuses." The CEO's voice was pragmatic. "We can't force her to return. And frankly, after what happened, she'd have grounds for a lawsuit that would bury us." Marcus hadn't thought about lawsuits. He'd thought about redemption, about making amends, but the CEO was right. Diane had every reason to destroy them, him. "I don't care about the lawsuit," Marcus said. "I care about fixing this." The CEO nodded slowly. "Draft a reinstatement offer. Include back pay, formal apology, and have legal review it for additional compensation." She earned more than her salary. Marcus worked through the night. The offer letter grew from 1 page to 3. Reinstatement at a higher position. Full back pay plus 3 months additional salary. Health insurance retroactive to her termination date. A formal letter of recommendation. An apology that took 17 drafts before it felt remotely adequate. At dawn, he drove to Diane's apartment again. This time he brought the offer letter, his checkbook, and something else. The security footage on a thumb drive. Proof. In case she ever needed it. He knocked, waited. The door opened. Diane looked worse than before. Dark circles deepened, shoulders rigid with exhaustion. She saw Marcus and sighed. "Mr. Webb, I have to leave for work." "I know. I won't take long." He held out the envelope. "Please, just read this." Diane took it warily. Opened it. Her eyes moved across the first page, then the second. Her expression never changed. "You think money fixes this?" she asked quietly. "No," Marcus said. "Nothing fixes this. But it's a start. Please, Diane, come back. Let me make this right." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and handed it to him. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." Diane closed the door. Inside, she leaned against it again, the envelope clutched in her hands. 3 months' salary would save her apartment. Back pay would cover her daughter's tuition. But returning to Webb Industries meant facing the people who'd watched her termination. Meant walking past David's smirking face. Meant working for a man who'd valued punctuality over her humanity. She set the envelope on the table, stared at it. Her mother's voice whispered, "Do what needs doing, but what needed doing now?" Accepting the offer meant survival. Refusing it meant maintaining dignity. Diane didn't know which mattered more. 1 week later, Diane returned to Webb Industries. Not as an employee, as a visitor. She'd called ahead, requesting a meeting with Marcus and the executive team. They'd agreed immediately. Now she sat in the same conference room where she'd been terminated, wearing the same emerald green blouse. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus sat across from her, visibly nervous. The CEO sat at the head of the table. HR Director Janet looked like she wanted to disappear. 6 other executives filled the remaining seats. Diane placed a folder on the table. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course," the CEO said. "We're glad you're here. Have you considered our offer?" "I have." Diane opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots from the security footage. "But first, I need you to understand something. What I did at the hospital, I didn't do it for recognition, or gratitude, or a better job." She slid one image across the table, Diane holding Ethan's hand. "I did it because a child needed help. That's all." Another image. Diane pressing the call button, staying calm while Ethan struggled to breathe. "I didn't tell Mr. Webb because it wasn't about him. It was about his son." A third image. Diane singing to Ethan, his small face relaxed for the first time in the footage. "I was late because I chose to be, because some things matter more than punctuality." The room was silent. Diane met Marcus's eyes. "You asked what I want. Here's what I want. I want the policy changed." The CEO leaned forward. "Which policy?" "The attendance policy. The one that treats people like machines. The one that doesn't account for life or family or emergencies that don't fit into neat categories. Diane's voice remained calm, but steel ran through it. I want flexibility built in. I want employees trusted to manage their time when they're managing something bigger than work. Janet shifted uncomfortably. That could be abused. It could also save lives, Diane interrupted. Mine, others. You can have accountability without cruelty. You just have to choose it. The CEO nodded slowly. What else? Training. For management. On unconscious bias. On listening. On recognizing that people's circumstances don't always show up in spreadsheets. Diane looked at Marcus. On remembering that employees are human. Marcus's eyes were wet. I'm so sorry, Diane. I know you are. Her voice softened. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Action does. Change the system. Make sure nobody else has to choose between saving a life and keeping their job. She stood. I'll accept your offer, but not to come back. I want the money transferred to a scholarship fund at my daughter's college. For single parents working multiple jobs. In my mother's name, the CEO blinked. You don't want the job? I want better than the job. I want to matter. I want what I did to mean something beyond one child, one night, one moment. Diane picked up her folder. Change the policy. Fund the scholarship. Then we're even. Marcus stood abruptly. That's not enough. I deserve to walk out of here with my head high, Diane said. That's all I ever wanted. She walked to the door, paused, turned back. Your son is a good kid, Mr. Webb. He's going to be okay. Make sure you're there for him. Not at the office until midnight. Not chasing metrics, there, present, that's what he needs. She left. The conference room stayed silent for a full minute. Then the CEO spoke. Draft the policy changes. Fund the scholarship. Can someone get Marcus a box of tissues? Marcus didn't cry. Not there. But later, alone in his office, he watched the security footage one more time. Diane's quiet competence. Her selfless care. Her strength. He'd learned more about leadership in 30 minutes with her than in 10 years of business school. He picked up the phone, called the hospital, asked about volunteer opportunities in the pediatric wing. If Diane could give her time freely, so could he. It was a start. 3 months later, Webb Industries announced sweeping policy changes. The attendance policy was restructured. Flexibility for emergencies, case-by-case reviews, emphasis on outcomes over face time. Mandatory bias training for all managers. An anonymous reporting system for employees facing impossible choices. The press release mentioned Diane by name, with her permission. It detailed her sacrifice, her courage, her quiet heroism. The story went viral. Local news picked it up. Then national outlets. By week's end, Diane Carter was famous. She hated it. Fame felt like exposure, like standing naked under fluorescent lights. But her daughter called, crying with gratitude. Mom, the scholarship. Other students are getting help because of you. That made the attention bearable. Just barely. Marcus stepped down as regional manager. Not fired. He requested a lateral move to employee relations. I need to understand what I couldn't see before, he told the CEO. She approved. His salary dropped. His hours became irregular. Jennifer worried at first, then relaxed when she noticed Marcus smiling more. Present more, Ethan's condition stabilized. New monitoring protocols caught episodes before they became critical. He started 3rd grade. Brought home paintings of firefighters and astronauts. Talked about becoming a doctor someday. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus brought Ethan to the hospital. Not as a patient, as a visitor. They went to the 4th floor, found Diane finishing her custodial shift. Ethan saw her and ran. Miss Diane. She turned, surprised. Then she smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. She knelt down. Hey, sweetheart. You look good. I feel good. Ethan hugged her. Dad said you helped me. Thank you. Diane's eyes glistened. You're very welcome. Marcus approached carefully. "Thank you for seeing us. I know you didn't have to." "He wanted to see you," Diane said simply. "That's enough reason." They stood there, the three of them, in the hallway where everything had changed. Ethan held Diane's hand, the same hand that had held his through 17 crises, the same hand that had pressed call buttons and smoothed blankets and offered comfort when nobody else was watching. "I'm working with the Pediatric Foundation," Marcus said, "fundraising for better overnight monitoring, making sure every child has someone watching." "Like you watched Ethan?" Diane nodded. "That's good. That's important. Will you join the board? We need your perspective, your voice." She considered this. "Maybe, I'll think about it." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. Marcus would take it. As they left, Ethan looked back. "Bye, Miss Diane." She waved, watched them disappear into the elevator. Then she returned to her work, mopping floors, emptying trash, making spaces clean for sick children. The work she'd always done. The work that mattered. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. She was still Diane Carter, night custodian. But now the world knew her name, knew what she'd done, knew that heroes didn't always wear capes. Sometimes they wore scrubs and worked the night shift. Sometimes they sacrificed everything for children who would never know. Sometimes they stayed silent, not from weakness, but from strength. Diane pushed her cart toward the next room. Behind her the hallway gleamed, clean, ready, safe, just the way she always left it. 6 months after the firing, Diane stood in her daughter's college auditorium. The scholarship ceremony was small, intimate. 5 students received the first awards from the Sarah Carter Memorial Scholarship Fund, named for Diane's mother. Each recipient was a single parent working multiple jobs. Each one carried the weight of impossible choices. Diane watched them accept their awards, watched their faces transform with relief, with possibility. She thought of her mother's worn hands, her mother's exhausted eyes, her mother's endless capacity for care. This was what it meant. Not the sacrifice itself, but what the sacrifice built. Not the suffering, but the survival it enabled for others. Marcus attended the ceremony, sat in the back, didn't approach afterward, just nodded once when their eyes met. Respect, not redemption. That would take years, maybe forever. But respect. Diane left the auditorium as the sun set. The city glowed gold and amber. She walked to her car, still rust-edged, still barely holding together. Inside she sat for a moment in the fading light. Her phone showed a text from the hospital. "Night shift starts in 2 hours. See you then," she smiled. Answered, "I'll be there because some things didn't change. Some things shouldn't change." Care didn't clock out. People weren't problems. And somewhere in the city, children slept in hospital beds, safe because someone chose to stay. Diane started her car. The engine coughed, then caught. She drove toward Children's Memorial, toward her work, toward the quiet heroism of simply showing up. The world moved around her, fast, loud, demanding. But Diane moved through it at her own pace. Not late, not early, just exactly when she needed to be. And that in the end was enough.